Sailor Moon is my favorite anime. I've watched it ever since I was a little kid. I get so nostalgic about it, and I still watch it to this day just for fun. Something I didn't notice as a kid is that there are a lot of references in Sailor Moon to things like mythology and religion. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, but just as a disclaimer, unlike the science-themed videos that I do, this is not at all my area of expertise, so please feel free to correct me on things. This is just something I thought would be fun to learn about. And today's theme is that beautiful, dreamlike world of the Silver Millennium Moon Kingdom, and specifically we're going to be talking about Princess Serenity and Prince Endymion. In Sailor Moon, Usagi is the reincarnation of Princess Serenity. Princess Serenity lived on the moon with her mother Queen Serenity in a gorgeous palace surrounded by columns and fountains and flower gardens as far as the eye could see. Serenity falls in love with Prince Endymion, who is the Prince of Earth, reborn later as Mamoru/Tuxedo Mask. There's a lot of names to keep track of in Sailor Moon, as it turns out. And they're kind of characterized as a star-crossed lovers type of relationship. In Greek mythology, we have Selene, who is the goddess of the moon. You might think of Artemis as the goddess of the moon, and of course we have an Artemis character in Sailor Moon as well. But Artemis is part of the Titan pantheon, whereas Selene is an Olympian.
So I actually got that backwards when I recorded it. Selene is the Titan and Artemis is the Olympian. My bad.
Selene rode a silver chariot pulled by white horses, and her job was to pull the moon across the sky every single night. The goddess Selene is actually explicitly mentioned in the Sailor Moon manga, where it's kind of the Earth people's name for Queen Serenity. And Queen Serenity kind of is the goddess of the moon in that particular sense, although Selene's story that I'll talk about next kind of actually fits Princess Serenity more. So I get the sense that both of these characters were inspired by the one goddess. And the goddess Selene is often depicted with a crescent moon on her forehead. Alternatively, she's been shown with horns or a crown, but some sort of head adornment that has to do with the moon. And of course, we can say the same about the crescent moon on Sailor Moon's head. Endymion is characterized as a beautiful mortal man. He lives on Earth, and sometimes he's depicted as a shepherd. That's probably the most common one, but in some versions of the story he is a king or an astronomer. In all of the stories, he is frequently stargazing at the moon, and Selene, the goddess, falls in love with him. Again, we're talking about myth, so there's a lot of different versions of the story, but one common theme is eternal sleep. Endymion gets put into an eternal sleep by Zeus, and at that point Selene visited him every night. So why is he in an eternal sleep? Well, there's different versions. So in one version I read, Endymion actually chose to be put in an eternal sleep to preserve his beauty, which is kind of funny, thinking about it in terms of Sailor Moon. I feel like that's something maybe Zoisite would do. In another version, Endymion is being punished by Zeus for having romantic feelings for Hera, so I don't really know what's going on there, but, you know, okay, seems like a Zeus thing to do. And finally, there's a version where it was Selene's choice to put Endymion in an eternal sleep, specifically to preserve him in place so that he'd never leave her. And it's a little creepy. There's references to her going every night to kiss him while he's sleeping, and, you know, yikes. Ironically, there is a sort of controversy in the Sailor Moon fandom about consent and kissing between Mamoru and Usagi. It's the other way around, but it's interesting that it came up anyway. Could it be inspired by this? Probably not. I don't know. What is that? I'm gonna look that up real quick. Is it about kissing while sleeping? Because that would be really funny. I think it is. I think it's either sleeping or drunk. Let's see. Yeah, kissing sleeping people. That is literally what people talk about, is him kissing her while she's sleeping. That's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but like, it's funny that it matches the myth. Anyway, in the myth, apparently Selene and Endymion have 50 daughters, which, can you imagine 50 Chibiusas? Eternal sleep is of course used by the Dark Kingdom in Sailor Moon, and we also have that part where Mamoru is being brainwashed by the Dark Kingdom and kind of put in a sleeping chamber. So I feel like there are a few references to the myth in there with regard to the sleeping component. Interestingly, the story of Selene and Endymion became popular on Roman sarcophagi. And the idea, I think, the connection to death is with the eternal sleep component and sort of the feeling of love and longing and maybe wanting that for the deceased and for the people who are still alive and still love those people. I can see where there can be some sort of interesting metaphors in there with the story. Endymion can usually be spotted on these sarcophagi as the guy laying down dramatically, and then Selene usually has the big crescent moon on her forehead, and then maybe the chariot and the horses behind her. There's a couple other symbols that are often associated with Selene. One of them is a torch that she's often holding, and also you'll often see a billowing sort of veil or cloak behind her or around her body. I think these actually fit really well with the symbology of Sailor Moon as well, with Sailor Moon's wands and those sort of flowy ribbons that appear when she transforms. In some of the later European art of this myth, Selene is depicted in sort of long white flowing clothing that kind of reminds me of Princess Serenity's dress, and I wonder if there was some inspiration drawn there as well. A lot of these paintings are called Diana and Endymion because, again, with myth it kind of changes over time, and so the story became associated with the goddess Diana as opposed to the goddess Selene over time. And Diana is another Sailor Moon character, so you can see there's a lot of little references in there to different types of mythology. I think the use of myth as inspiration in Sailor Moon is one of the things that makes that sort of beautiful, interesting lore so good and what makes it really capture our hearts. But Sailor Moon definitely did make its own version of the story that stands out on its own and is really creative. And it's so cool to keep learning new things about my favorite anime, just like I'm always learning new things. It's wonderful. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.